Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Barbara Mather, and I'm chair of the board. And it's my very pleasant duty this evening to welcome you to the first event of the Presidential Listening Tour and to introduce Rebecca Chopp. For those of you who have met her already, I'm sure you have a good sense for why there is such a positive buzz on campus about her arrival as the 14th president of Swarthmore. She is truly a force to be reckoned with. She's thoughtful and very dynamic. She's visionary and extremely practical, serious and focused, but with a grand sense of humor that you'll all come to appreciate. She shares the values of our community and the commitment to community that are deeply rooted here. She also has extensive experience in higher education, which is a great asset to us, particularly in these difficult times. She spent 7 years at Colgate as president, developed and implemented a comprehensive strategic plan there, led the most successful campaign in their history on the way to raising $400 million. She's formerly a dean at Yale Divinity School, and she was, for many years, provost at Emory. She's also a well-known and respected scholar of religion and American culture. Her recent interests include the changing structure and culture of higher education and the role of liberal arts in a democratic society. Please join me in warmly welcoming Rebecca as she shares some early insights about the college, poses some provocative questions for all of us, and begins this conversation with alumni, friends, parents, and others, which will continue throughout the year. Rebecca.
Thank you for that incredibly warm welcome. It's a delight to be here, and I enjoyed meeting many of you during the reception, and hope I'll meet the rest of you after the speech and the question and answers. I really want to have a conversation tonight. I'm on a grand listening tour. I'll be going to 12 cities in the U.S. as well as in London and maybe even Asia, if we can fit that in, to ask alumni and parents and friends what's enduring about Swarthmore, what shouldn't change, what should change, what's on your mind, what's your hope and aspiration, what makes this place special, where should it go in the 21st century. I want to begin that tour appropriately at home tonight here on campus, and I appreciate you coming out to help us begin what I think will be an exciting period in our history. So I'm going to make a few comments, and then I will open it up. I'll have some questions. I hope you have questions. I hope you have comments. But it's just the first time we'll talk. We'll have many times to talk, and you can always call me or email me or come and see me or invite me to come and see you. I have in my files one particular file that I've collected for some years. I think of it as my hopes and dreams file. In this file, I've put essays that I've collected over the years, essays about education, the best essays I could find. In 2001, in the very center of that file, I put an essay entitled "The Meaning of Swarthmore." It's a beautiful essay, this particular version. In bold, kind of dancing across the pages, are all these wonderful phrases. The tradition of excellence, the community of learners, potential and obligation, the excitement of academics, making the world a better and humane place. This essay for me summarized, right there in the center of this special file, all I believed about education. But I never could have imagined in 2001 that this night I'd be joining you in living these values, in thinking together about how we're stewards of a very special tradition, and in starting to plan for our future, because always we must. Now, every day I see the faculty and the students live these values on the campus, and I know we have a number of faculty with us tonight. Thank you for attending. I see faculty and students in the classroom, in their teaching, in their collaboration over groundbreaking research, in the academic program, including, not limited to the core, but including at the center, the core. I see our faculty and students living these values. But I'm also starting to realize how deeply you, the alumni, live these values too. That for you, these values didn't stop when you graduated. You've lived your life, committed to that full life of the Swarthmore graduate. It's a delight to see the students on campus. It's a delight for me to see their love for learning. They're fabulous young men and women. You know, they work hard. They do work hard. You remember that, how hard you worked here in college. But they also have a wonderful time outside the classroom. They combine the rigor of academics with the love of life and inquiry. It may be a pterodactyl hunt. It may be in the primal scream. It may be as they express themselves in over 100 clubs and organizations. It may be in athletics, and I hope you do know how highly we're ranked in soccer right now. Yay. It may be in the arts, in their many, many music, theater, and dance. They live this life. I could tell you so many stories about our students. Our faculty could tell you even more, but let me tell you just one about one student, Caitlin Malarkey. Caitlin is our 6th Rhodes Scholar in 9 years. That's incredible. She is currently at Oxford, where she's working on virology and public health, her deep academic passion. Needless to say, she succeeded in the classroom. But when she wasn't in the classroom, she was succeeding on the field and on the track. She was captain for 2 years of our women's soccer team, 07 and 08, when they won the ECAC South Region title. She holds 4 records in track: the women's indoor mile, the 5,000, the outdoor 3,000 steeplechase, and the 1,500. We could tell many more stories of students, but she's a great example of those values, of that passion, of that energy. I see it in the faculty also. I don't think I've ever been in a school, and I've always tried to be in schools where faculty love to teach. I don't think I've ever been in a place where the faculty the faces just kind of light up when they start talking about teaching. Several weeks ago, we had first collection, and several of us gave speeches. Sarah, where are you? Oh, Sarah just had to leave for a child. She gave one of the speeches. And the day after our first collection, I got an email from one of our faculty who had gone on the web and listened to all these speeches. She's on leave, and she wrote me to tell me how much she missed teaching this semester. Amy Cheng Vollmer in biology said she was filled with gratitude for the leave to get ready for her teaching and her research with students, but she was really sad to miss the semester. She said, quite simply, there is no place like Swarthmore. Indeed. The faculty and the students make this place special. But it's also our history. Over the summer, I spent a lot of time getting to know those great gardens on our campus and meeting staff. But I also read a lot about our history. I read about all the various presidents. I can tell you a lot of stories. Parrish, Nason, Adelet. Wonderful for me to read the history of the school through the legacies of these marvelous presidents. But I also read about the founders, people like Lucretia Mott and Elias Hicks. Now, as a scholar of progressive movements in American history, I know a lot about the tradition of the Hicksite Quakers, and so do you, but it's a really phenomenal tradition, and just for a second we should honor them. They led the development of progressive education in this country. They led the movements for social justice in this country. They led the importance of this country, always thinking ahead, in front, having visions of what it was for all humans to flourish. And they had those values that we live out today. Values of equality, simplicity, commitment to justice, generous giving, love of nature, respect for each other, the peaceful settlement of differences. Again, I'm just struck at the pleasure of the opportunity to be with you to share these incredibly important values. And it's these values in part that I think are so important for us to think about as we move forward. How do we continue the tradition of our founders, tradition that has lasted these many, many years, about respect for each other and peaceful settlement of disputes? We live right now in a country where we can't seem to have a debate on any topic in the Congress or in any major city or in many of our communities. But we have long taught at Swarthmore from our Hicksite founders that the individual is always connected to the community, and the community is made up of individuals who respect one another, who listen to one another, who work toward consensus. Can we imagine how we can not only teach our current students and the next generation, but how we can, in some ways, help others realize the skills, the values, the habits of civil discourse, of peaceful settlement, of rigorous debate in what Michael Sandel calls a clamorous public. Another value that our founders had was that of simple living, which I now call sustainable living. Can we find more ways to live on this campus in a sustainable fashion? Can we teach this current generation and the next how to live simply, simple, good lives? Can we help our students and our staff and our faculty and our alums learn to live sustainable lives with their own health and learn about the impact of their lives on others? So these questions and more I want to start talking with you about. And I'm happy to talk about what's going on the campus or the financial situation. We've got a number of managers here tonight who can help answer those questions as well. But I want us to begin to imagine together where we take these values into the future. Let's talk about Swarthmore. But let's also not just look in the mirror. Let's look beyond it and imagine, what does this country need? What is our obligation? Another good Quaker word. What is our obligation to the greater good? So let me stop there and open the floor. Thank you.
One of the issues that has surfaced very seriously in America as a whole, but also in academia, is civility. And Swarthmore does have a history of going out of its way to accommodate both students and faculty and the community. Do you see this as becoming a problem here, or is this tradition strong enough that you can get over whatever seems to be ailing the country?
So the question is about the wonderful long tradition we have of civility, and do we see that tradition strong enough here that in the midst of the American culture, which lacks a lot of civility, can we address our issues here? I haven't been here long enough to give a definitive answer, but I would say I've been extremely impressed in the faculty meetings as our faculty reckon with the changing economic environment, and we look at trying to figure out the solutions, how we're going to live on a sustainable endowment, how we're going to live more simply. I've been incredibly impressed with the ability to have conversation and discussion. And I think it's taught to our students, and I think it's in our student culture. But I think where your question really pulls on us is that the students come in from different cultures. And we've got to continually, with each class, help bring them into that culture of civility. Yes?
Rebecca, my name is John Van Til. I'm the president of the class of 1961, and I'm also have served for the last several years as the assistant clerk of the Swarthmore Friends meeting. I wanted first of all to invite you to, again, as we have, join with us some morning in worship in the meeting. We need to learn about that historical set of observations about the Hicksite founding of the college and these values as they persist today in the college and in our meeting. So again, welcome, and please recognize that our hope that you will put us on your busy schedule is a genuine one. My question has to do with the dark side of your position and the dark side of the college. As a former student, as a former faculty member, and for now more years than those, as a townie. How is it that your experience and what is your judgment allow you to do as you face the really tough decisions that a president faces? The decisions involved in figuring out which of these wonderful people on your faculty you want to continue beyond a 6-year term. What to do with students who, in their exuberance, may exceed the ability of the college to hold their excitement. What to do...
Great phrase.
What to do about alumni who, will show up and tell you exactly what you want to do. What is it that works with you in bringing those values to bear on these very difficult administrative challenges?
It's a wonderful question. So the first part was an invitation to the Friends Meeting House, and I look forward to it. I walk by there every day and look forward to getting the right frame in my schedule to attend. And the second question, and I'm just summarizing very rapidly, is the dark side of any administration is making those tough decisions. So how does one make them? What is there in my experience or background or perspective that allows judgments to be made, be it student or faculty or alumni? I think the best word is collaboration. None of those decisions are ever made or should be made in isolation. So, you mentioned the tenure and promotion process for faculty. At Swarthmore, that's done really through a very collaborative process. The department weighs in, there are external reviewers, there's a committee that sits with the provost and the president, and long discussions and deliberation. My experience as an administrator, and I've been an administrator for an awfully long time, in one way or another, is the collaboration and attempt to move to consensus is almost always the best way. Sometimes, of course, in a student disciplinary situation or an administrative decision, at the end of the day, a person has to make a decision. But I would never do so without a lot of collaboration. The worst decision I've ever made, that I didn't make it, the worst decision I've ever seen a president make was a decision he made in the middle of the night in 30 minutes, and he forgot to call everyone. And that made such an impact on me. And so I've got Maurice's number memorized and other people's, and Barbara's number memorized for the really tough ones. So I think collaboration is important. I'm also a pretty data-based decision maker, and I think that many times it is easy in education to make our decisions by our beliefs, because we are a belief-based, we believe in the future. But I think getting the data on the table, again, for people to look at is extremely important. Then the third thing, I think, is experience does help. Experience of having to make decisions, of having to see difficult situations is a real asset. I'm a real believer that most students, most alumni, and all faculty, 99.9% of the time, really want the best thing. They're not operating ever out of bad faith. So sometimes it's just a matter of talking with them until, again, together in a collaborative fashion, one can find a consensus or a compromise or the right way forward. And I think that's how we do it with our students. Kai, are you still here? Did I see Kai Campbell? Please stand up for a second. Many of you know Kai. He's a faculty member. He's our acting dean. So I like to say I sleep at night because he doesn't. But I've seen Kai do this year. I mean, I've seen him already with some very difficult student situations go to the students, ask them why they were doing what they were doing, and reason it out. It's important with students to always ask yourself, how can this be an educational moment? Though sometimes you're not sure it can. Yes?
What kind of Quakerism background have you had?
I am not a Quaker by birth or by participation. I have been to meetings in various places, and I'm a scholar of the history of progressive movements in religion. So right now it's a lot of studying. I have studied the Quaker tradition, but you are my first community to live with in real Quaker history, so I'm looking forward to that. And I look forward to people teaching me that. I know that you're not all Quakers, of course, but I do believe those values, the values that our founders started with, really are very much alive in this tradition. And I'd love to hear from some of you. Feel free to ask questions, but I'd also just love to hear about what Swarthmore means to you. What shouldn't ever be changed? What's enduring about this place? Yes, please.
I'd like to venture that there's no such thing as a stupid question at Swarthmore.
Wonderful. So that to what's enduring, it's that there is no stupid question at Swarthmore, that people love to teach. Even the students, they love to learn. I think that's a wonderful value. One of the things I worry about in higher education, I don't worry about it here, but I worry about it in many schools, is that it is no longer cool to be intellectual for many young men and women. They want to do well in the class, and then they want to leave the class and they want to do other things. And they have trouble integrating their intellect with their athletic ability or their hanging around the dorm or their arts or something. And one of the powerful things at Swarthmore for me is how the students really do themselves create a culture where it is fine to go to the dining hall and have big discussions. In fact, one of the happiest moments for me last spring was when I went to the dining hall with a student, sat down, and on my left, there was this huge debate going on about Foucault, who's a French deconstructionist, and what he had to say about the current economic impact that was going on in this country and the world. Now, that just wouldn't have happened at the other schools I'd been at. And I thought it was really cool. And I jumped in. Yes, please.
Have the recent financial and economic problems that everybody's experienced changed your plans for Swarthmore in any way?
Yes. So the question is, has the recent economic difficulty changed my plans, I would say our plans for Swarthmore in any way? Luckily, I guess in terms of the plans, by the time I actually started interviewing, it was clear that the economic picture was going to be a difficult one. So I didn't have huge plans, and I would have always wanted to join. It is important for us to understand that the economic environment has impacted us as it has everywhere else. Last year, the Board of Managers projected that our endowment would be down 30% by the end of fiscal year. That was a good projection, and in March, it was. But, you know, we have a phenomenal finance office and a great Board of Managers, and they work very hard on the investments. So the year end was down 16.8%. So relatively, we can all pat ourselves on the back and say, that's really good. But of course, it's still down 16.8%. So our endowment has suffered real loss. And we are also in for a wobbly recovery. We just don't know how to project. So right now, we are engaged on campus and with the Board of Managers in figuring out a budget that our endowment can sustain. So I think a lot of the planning in the future will be good Quaker frugal plans for how to live. We will not touch the core of our excellence, but we will live with a few less resources. I don't know, Barbara, Fred, or any of David want to make a comment about that? Okay. Yes, sorry.
You mentioned values in your opening remarks, specifically consensus. Two you didn't mention, but you might have, were speaking truth to power, and I forgot the other one, the age and this one. But my question is in two parts. Thinking of your previous assignment, how did the presence or absence of similar values present opportunities or barriers to going where you wanted to go in your plan, in that strategic plan that Barbara mentioned? And then thinking of this current situation, how do those values you mentioned and the others that go with it, how do they present opportunities or challenges to going where whatever the strategic plan will become will take us?
Right, I think I've just gotten an assignment for a new book. That was a very thoughtful question.
He's an engineer.
That's great. That's what this place is so special. It's a really great question. First, and I thank you for the addition of another good value, which is speaking truth to power. And I think that is a really important Hicksite Quaker value. One of my heroines that everyone probably will tire of me talking about is Lucretia Mott, who was 4'11" and weighed 90 pounds. And I think she took the whole world on. She knew how to speak truth to power. But the question was, how did the values in my last assignment at Colgate University help or hinder the strategic plan, and how would I imagine the values here to help or hinder the strategic plan? So I don't think it's all about values. I think it's also institutional structures, culture, leadership of the alumni and the faculty and the managers. I think institutions are complex and they're different frames of reference. But I do think the values are exceedingly important. So my academic work was the study of how movements change, of how religious traditions or religious movements change, how they reinterpret history and reinterpret themselves and move forward. And if you study those like I did, you find two things. One, sometimes there are environmental factors. There are always institutional factors. But a really key driver, and sometimes the only driver you can really use, are the values. So Colgate did not pay attention to its Baptist values. It was started as a Northern Baptist school. In fact, an alum wrote me today, an alum of Swarthmore wrote me today and pointed out that the Quaker colleges that are now non-sectarian did a much better job at somehow keeping their values than some colleges like Colgate. Many Baptist colleges and many Methodist colleges really left their values behind. That's not to say Colgate didn't have values. They had values from their tradition. Colgate's a very under-endowed school. It's a Division I school. It's a very, let's take the next. It's a very aspirational school, and it had this wonderful set of values that it was going to play in the big leagues, even though in many ways it didn't deserve to, given its endowment and things. And that was a enduring value at Colgate, and we used that value in the strategic plan. It's hard for me to exactly say how we will use our strong values here in the strategic planning process. I am interested in questions of the intellectual life in the 21st century. I'm interested in how we help our alumni and our students and our faculty see themselves as a force for supporting the intellectual life, not just for academics, but for everyone. So I think our value would relate there. I'm interested in the question you were asking about civility, and I think a value that we have would play into that. I'm very interested in sustainability. I know that's so popular right now in the U.S., but my reading has convinced me that we're not doing that much about it in the U.S., and my guess is that's because we don't have the value in this culture of sustainable living. So again, I think that's another good place. So I think it will be up to us to knit our values together with how we move forward the structures in the culture. Yes?
What role and level of visibility and engagement do you see Swarthmore playing in the geographic region, in the larger Philadelphia area?
Yeah. So the question is, what role do I see Swarthmore playing in the larger geographical area, especially in the Philadelphia area? So I hope you help me with this, because I think we should do more to let Swarthmore be better known in this area. I hope, and I think the Board of Managers hope, that we do more to let it be better known nationally. It's extremely well known in higher education and in admissions counselors. But the public awareness of this school is not as great as it could be. This summer, I went out to talk to every staff division on campus, from the dining hall to facilities to advancement, etc. And one of the things I heard most frequently was that most of their families and their neighbors in the Philadelphia metropolitan area do not know what Swarthmore is. And many think it's Skidmore. We have to fix that. So Nancy Nicely is our very competent director of communications and public relations, and I think she'll help us all think about ways. Some of it's connecting with the newspapers and magazines. Some of it's using the web creatively, and I think you'll see us do a lot more with the web. But some of it's also using all of our connections. I mean, we really are a lot of connectors out there who can help lift the college's profile. Yes?
As a parent of two children who just graduated from here, you asked what we saw as the values here. And I hear you talking a lot about academic excellence here, which I think is the wonderful redeeming quality here. But when my children chose to come here, one of the reasons that they also chose to come here is that there are certainly a number of institutions that respect academic excellence, but this institution respects academic excellence and has a strong emphasis on responsibility to the community. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just you're a smart person, it is what kind of human being you are here. And that's what you want to know what distinguishes this school. To me, that's what distinguishes this school. So my question would be, what do you see as your role in making sure that that responsibility to the community and one another prevails as you move forward?
Mm-hmm. I think that is a very deep value. The question is, this is from a parent who has had two children here, and they came certainly because of the academic excellence, but they also came because of the commitment to the community, to a more just, a better world, reaching out within this community and beyond it as well. And what do I think of that, and what do I see as my responsibility? I think you're right. I mean, when I interviewed here, I said that there were several things that attracted me to this school, and one was academic excellence, but the second was a commitment to the common good, to ethical intelligence, to the civic good. Again, very much a part of, I think, the Quaker tradition. So, I mean, I think part of my role is to ensure that it continues and to find new ways to express itself. I think that's deeply embedded in this community. I see it on the faculty. It's not just the students. In many schools today, both the community life and the sense of the common good or giving back or ethical intelligence is done by the students outside the classroom. And it's far more integrated here. It's also integrated with the staff. The staff are also very engaged in that process. So I will very much want to make sure that continues. I see my role as helping that process along, but certainly I don't have to create it. It is already here, so it's a matter of nurturing and steering it. And adding to it, I think one of my interests in sustainability is how I can add that and stir it into the community and the commitments that are already here. I saw it. Yes, ma'am.
Based on your experience at Colgate and your aspirations for Swarthmore, I'd be interested in hearing what your process for developing a strategic plan will be. And I'm even more interested in hearing how you then plan to implement that to, make change happen.
Right.
So often I don't see them implemented.
So the question is, based on my experience at Colgate, how would I go about doing strategic planning here? And more importantly, how would I implement it? Because you don't see them always implemented, and that is so true. I, too, have seen those 12 volumes of somebody's strategic plan, once written, put on the shelf, and never taken down. I think it is important to state that we need to, right now, focus on our budget and focus on restructuring the budget. That in itself is a kind of pre-planning activity, because questions all over are bubbling up, and we're saying to ourselves, wow, that's a great question, but it's not going to be solved through it's not a budget question. It just comes up. So I think we're really already starting to get a list. So, there are all sorts of types of strategic planning approaches, as you know. One is that every nook and cranny of an institution lists things out. Another is that you attempt to evolve the organization in 2 or 3 basic phrases. There are lots of others. Deciding what kind of planning process to use is itself a very strategic choice. And I think before we do a strategic plan, we need to do what's called a SWOT analysis. We need to look carefully at our environment. We need to understand what might threaten our institution, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and then we need to make some decisions about what kind of planning process we want to use. I'm very big on evolution. I think I like organic planning processes better than times of radical change. So I don't expect that you'll see radical change from me and the faculty and the board. I think what you'll see is evolution, smart, strategic evolution. I do think it's important to implement it. I can't tell you now how we would implement it here. At Colgate, as we developed the plan, we also developed the implementation mechanism. So every time a strategy got formulated, an implementation plan got formulated along with it. A faculty and administrative team were assigned to it, and they reported on it regularly to the board. So I think you have to have both champions and a report structure and an evaluation plan built in. But, the contours of the plan have to be developed, again, through collaboration and evaluation. Yes?
Over the past few years, we've seen schools become very competitive with adding more departments, increasing financial aid offers, some of the top schools. As you've been here for a short time now, what do you see in terms of the next 10 years? What does Swarthmore need to do to stay competitive? What will be different? And what we've seen has been more financial aid makes a little more dependent on the endowment. How do you look forward and say, how do we support this? Do we need more students on campus? Do we need another capital campaign at some point? What goals do you have for your initial view in terms of what should Swarthmore be like 10 years from now? How do we get there?
Yeah. So the question is kind of what are my views on what Swarthmore will be like and how do we get there? Given the many changes in financial aid and issues of size and all the competitive issues and internal commitments that we have made. Clearly from what I've said already, I wouldn't want to hurt the essence of Swarthmore. And I say I, but it's not. I wouldn't want us to do that. I want us to keep what's special about this place special. Swarthmore, probably by 1880, maybe by 1890, had decided that it was going to be one of the best colleges in America. And it took it a while to be there, of course, but it got there. That, too, is our tradition, to offer the very best kind of expression of collegiate education. And I wouldn't want us to turn away from that aspiration and drive. So I think that's important. Size is an important question that we can look at. Every time we look at size, we're going to have to look at community and culture because they're really related. I've been in schools with 20,000. I've been in schools with 12,000. I've been in school with 2,800. And now I'm in a school that's 1,490. Size makes a big difference in the community. So it's not just numbers and money. It's also culture and relationships and community, and all that has to be weighed together. Need blind is really important. It's important to, I think, many in this school. I am a first-generation college student. I didn't get to come to a fine college like this. I didn't know about Swarthmore. Hope I would have gotten in, but I didn't know about it. Wish I would have. But where I did go, I went on financial aid. So someone was generous, and I and many like me got to go. That's a very important value. It's a very important structure. Being need blind allows us to build carefully a well-rounded class. We can get the kinds of students that they need for their intellectual inquiry, and we can get the students to work with the faculty. So, yes, I would like to do a campaign. I would like to raise an enormous sum for financial aid, because I think the best thing to do with financial aid is to endow it. I understand the alumni are very generous when it comes to financial aid. So I look forward to working with all of you on that. Let's see. I think we're past time. Was there one more final question?
You've mentioned a lot of times the value of collaboration. You also mentioned briefly the value of communication, the president who didn't communicate his decision. I was wondering if you would comment on the Quaker value of consensus decision-making and where you see that fitting into your term here at Swarthmore.
Right. So the question is, we've talked about collaboration, communication. How about the Quaker tradition of consensus decision-making? I think it is very important to try to strive for consensus where it is possible and where it is appropriate. As far as I can tell, our faculty very much attempt to operate in a consensus kind of pattern in meetings and in the faculty, which is extremely rare and something to be admired. As I understand it, though I have yet to be at a board meeting, our board also tries to follow consensus. And I think that will be important to continue. But of course, I also understand there are some times on some topics, in some situations, that you have to use other forms of decision making. Before I came, I talked to President Bennett at Earlham, who's a well-known authority on Quaker things and Quaker education, and we talked about this, and I said, so when do you know when to use consensus or not? And he said, the really important thing is to make sure through communication that everyone knows what form of decision-making is being used. That sometimes, he explained to me, you can't make a decision through consensus, and when you can't, it's fine, but that needs to be clearly said. So that makes sense to me. Okay, I think, I could stand up here. I'm having too much fun. But thank you so much for coming. This begins the listening tour. And I hope you will continue to talk with me, please, email or send me letters, or I will see you at one place or another. Help me learn about this very special place, and let's plan together how to continue our tradition.